To the front of the net. Puck work to the outside to Eklund. Howe back to Eklund again. Kerr sparring with Stevens in front. Eklund creeps behind. Out in front to Kerr. He scores! Tim Kerr and the Flyers are perfect on 5-on-3s. They are 3 for 3. Get their first power play goal of the night and tie the game.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah, and I'm here with Chef B, who's going to tell us about one of our sponsors here. Chef?
Yeah, O&B Puckcast is now brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. The winter months can be especially hard on our homes, from roof damage and peeling siding to frozen pipes and toilet overflows. Call Summit Public Adjusters before you call your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be stressful and confusing. Let Summit Public Adjusters take the stress out of the claim process by having our guys work for you. Get the most for your money and your repairs. The next time the big snow or the rain leaves you with some home damage, contact us for a free consultation. Summit Public Adjusters are licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Learn more at summitpublicadjusters.com or call 215-752-0560. Just tell them that the chef sent you.
Yeah, what was that number again, Chef?
215-752-0560.
That's terrific. All right, we're going to carry on with the rest of our show. And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 207, brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com. The Flyers going through a little bit of a rut, would you call it? Maybe a gully. They're 1-2-1 since our last regular episode. They've lost 5 of their last 6. They're 19-13-5 overall, clinging still to a wild card spot with 45 games remaining. And their league worst power play is giving them little margin for error every night. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the WJC and Cutter Gauthier, yay or nay. But let's go to the panel. Always to my left. Chef B, what's the good word?
Happy New Year, gentlemen. A new, new year, a new era of orange. God, we're getting to new everything this year, aren't we? So this is good. It's been fun hockey. Not so fun this West Coast strip, but we'll see what happens now. This is when the real test starts. This is it's how you recover from your West Coast trip. And we'll see what happens.
I think there's some wise words. And back from a little hiatus there, trip with the missus. I hope you had a great time. He is the great Dan Silver.
What's going on, guys? Yeah, Happy New Year. I'm just thankful that I'm not one of the reporters that has to ask John Tortorella questions after these losses, because it's painful having to watch people try and ask him questions. I would just be on eggshells the whole time.
Yeah, it's like a tooth extraction, It's not a pleasant sight, and you kind of are there kind of cringing with them. But yeah, I hear you. But
yeah, no, what would be great? When that guy broke out of jail and that guy snuck into the press conference and asked him a question like that, did you expect him to dress up like in a trench coat with another inmate on his shoulders and try to sneak around a la Little Rascal style? I would love somebody to just throw a question at Torts like that in a press conference, of that ridiculous nature, and just see what happens. Because I think that's comedy gold.
Chef, we do have press credentials, so ooh. I nominate you to go to a game and ask him that question.
Oh boy.
Although our credentials might get revoked.
Revoked after that one. You only get one question then.
Yeah, I mean, I could go over like a fart in church. So what was the thinking behind, scratching Deloria tonight?
Crickets.
Yeah. Okay. But you know what I want to do? Because I want to turn a little bit toward the positive. And don't worry, we're not going to be negative on the Flyers. We're going to be realistic as we usually are. So let's talk about the World Junior Championships. The semifinals are set for tomorrow. We're taping this on Wednesday. Sweden versus Czechia, and the U.S. with Cutter Gauthier versus Finland. Now, Oliver Bonk in Canada are out, and Alex Chernik and the Slovaks are out. Chernik got injured, so he didn't really have much of a tournament because he'd come in injured anyway, I think with a concussion. So they're getting set for these games. Cutter Gauthier, Dan, has 1 goal, 9 assists in 5 games for 10 points. And according to a microstat analysis that we desperately needed, I'm glad we got, he's doing well. What's that? What does Dan say?
Well, so before we get into that, you know how Team Canada lost, right? How the goal was scored that knocked them out?
It bonked off of somebody's stick?
Yeah. The shot went in off of Oliver Bonk's stick with 16 seconds left in the quarterfinal game, Canada against Czechia. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? I mean, Oliver Bonk seems like the nicest kid in the world. And he'd played a really good tournament. And then obviously that kind of stuff happens. But that, I mean, I think he had to take his Instagram account private after that happened because he was getting so many people that were like going after him. They kept showing him on the bench after the goal was scored. I mean, just what an unfortunate thing to happen to a young man. I'm sure he will get over it eventually, but it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
So let's, I'm saying a little prayer for Oliver Bonk that hopefully he can, move on from this. The good thing is that he was the youngest defenseman on Team Canada. So Bonk will be able to play for them again next year. So
there you go. If Steve Smith can get over what happened in '86 against the Flames, the Edmonton defenseman, and he still went on to win multiple Stanley Cups, I think 3 afterwards, I think Bonk can handle it.
Yeah. Yes, but again, he's really young. I mean, these types of things, obviously he will, I'm sure, eventually get over it. But I just wanted to mention that because
I'm glad you did.
Got to be a difficult time for him.
Sometimes we forget they're kids.
I know.
They get so caught up in the moment, and that's what
18,
happens.
19, yeah.
They're kids. I mean, winning the World Juniors would probably be the greatest moment of their lives up until then. So you can just imagine what it must feel like to lose, and not only lose, but be the guy whose stick the puck goes off of. Anyway. But
just one more thing. What could he have done differently? Did he make a bad play? I mean,
no, of course not. I'm not.
No,
but that's not what I'm. But that's not what I'm talking about. It's the result that matters, right?
Yeah.
So.
Right, but anybody criticizing him, it's almost like they don't know anything about hockey. That could happen to anybody.
Well, correct. That's correct. But it doesn't change the fact of what happened. Yeah. And I'm sure he's feeling terrible about it. So hopefully he's got a good head on his shoulders and he can kind of shake that off and move on and come back to the tournament next year and help lead Canada to a medal or something like that.
Sure.
Cutter Gauthier. There's so many different narratives around Cutter Gauthier. The whole thing's very funny because in college this year, I mean, he's probably leading the nation in shots or close to it. He's second or third in the nation in goals. And one of the criticisms has been that he just shoots so much. He's not really a playmaker, blah, 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 blah. Now, fast forward to the World Junior Championships. He's leading the entire tournament with 9 assists. He's leading the entire tournament with 10 points. Cutter Gauthier right now is sitting with 1 goal and 9 assists. It's like the complete opposite of what he's doing in NCAA. And it goes back to one thing that I mentioned before the tournament started was that I'm really looking forward to seeing Cutter Gauthier play with talented teammates. Because not that his guys at BC are chopped liver, but they're not anywhere near as good as the guys that he's going to be playing with in this tournament. Because BC keeps the Perreault, Smith, and Leonard line together, and then Gauthier plays with kind of 2 other wingers there. So for most of the tournament, Gauthier's been playing with Rutger McGroarty, who's his best friend, according to Gauthier. And then he started off the tournament with Jimmy Snuggerud on one wing, and now they had Oliver Moore on the wing in the last game. But he's playing with really good players.
Right.
And I'm extremely impressed with his play. Actually, he's the passes that he's making have been sensational. I mean, he's setting up plays. He's driving wide. He had a goal that he set up, I don't think the last game, but 2 games ago, where he took the puck in the neutral zone, went around a forward, went around a defenseman, then behind the net, and then sort of played a behind the back pass out front that they scored on. Yesterday in the quarterfinal, he had a sensational sort of like one-time pass to Oliver Moore. He'd set up behind the net. It was just a spectacular play. Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed. I love seeing the playmaking from him. I know people, and I guess you guys are going to want to debate too on the show, sort of center versus wing. And the other thing about Gauthier is that he still doesn't really engage physically. But here's the thing. You watch these kids these days, very few of these young players are engaging physically. And that's something that, like, when he comes to the Flyers, that's going to have to sort of be sorted out by Tortorella. But for me, it's been a very encouraging tournament so far for Gauthier. Look, he's leading the entire tournament in points. I don't know what people kind of want from him. And he's showing that he can be a playmaker. And to me, he's showing he can do it down the center of the ice. So I've been very impressed with his tournament. He was sort of not that noticeable in the first few games. I think he's become more and more noticeable as the games have gotten more important, which is good to see. The USA plays Finland tomorrow in the semifinals. I expect them to win that game. And, they're the big favorite right now to win the tournament. So there's a chance he's probably the front runner right now for MVP of the tournament. Him or Lekka Ramaki from Sweden, I would say. So he's in a really good shape. He's in a good position right now.
Okay.
Now you were talking about whether or not you're back and forth. Me and Isaiah were, before we jumped on, we were talking about whether he's a center or not. And my speculation is, I think if he comes to the Flyers this season, they're going to give him like 2 or 3 games at center to see if he has it, see if he's got the makeup for it. And then maybe maybe if they think it's advantageous, but I don't think he's going to be able to develop at the pro level. So maybe he goes to wing for the rest of the time up here or something along those lines. I think he seasons a little bit in the AHL at center because I'm not sure what kind of defensive responsibilities you can learn in a tournament like this. You're not learning the basics, Dan. So I know you're encouraged by what you see at center of what he's doing. What's your impressions of him going to center after the tournament for the Flyers or the Phantoms?
Well, I think there's got to be some defensive responsibility in this tournament, but also, I mean, I've been watching him play a decent amount at Boston College this year, and to me, again, some people watch him play and they think he's a wing. I watch him play and I think that he's fine down the middle, especially since he's not really that strong on board battles to this point. Which is a winger thing. I mean, what I see from him wheeling and dealing through the neutral zone, I kind of see a center a little bit more than a winger. But I think either way, I would project there to be some growing pains with Tortorella, just based on the fact that again, to me, very few kids these days come up and they've got the defensive tenacity and responsibility. So I think there's going to be some growing pains with Tortorella and him. But I think they'll try to develop him as a center. Keep in mind that he's on Boston College. They're the number 1 ranked team in college hockey. The Frozen Four this year, if they theoretically make it to the championship, I think it ends and then after it ends, there's only 1 regular season game left in the NHL. So it's very realistic that he may not play in any NHL games this season. I guess they could sign him to the ELC and have him play with the Phantoms in the playoffs. If that happens, yeah, I mean, I think that I think that they have to try and develop him as a center because of the organizational lack of depth at the center position. They have an overabundance of wingers and they need to develop centers. So I think the entire reason, look, he wanted to turn pro from what I understand at the end of last season. And the Flyers said, no, we'd like you to stay at Boston College 1 more year, continue developing at center, So I think 100% the Flyers are going to try to develop him at center and kind of go from there.
Now, to your point about the development, we talked about with Kevin Kurth. He said these kids don't know how to check. anymore. They can't accept a check or something along those lines too. So all that, what you just said, does not even surprise me anymore because you're not seeing a lot of big hitting in this tournament either. So,
yeah, Torts. I mean, you saw the quote that Torts had about Bobby Brink the other night that he's got
to learn how to check. Yeah,
he has to learn how to check.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the case with a lot of kids coming into the league these days. It's like a lost art.
Yep.
That's why you watch a guy like Ryan Leonard, and who's on Team USA, was taken right after the Flyers took Mitchell by the Caps. He knows how to hit, and he's a kid who always impresses me when I watch him. But for the most part, most of these players, these young kids these days, they don't know how to check.
Yeah, I'd say Leonard has a pro game. His biggest issue, if he has issues, is just getting a little stronger and getting used to the grind in the NHL. Geeky on Canada is a physical winger. He's been selected, but I've heard mixed stories about whether Gauthier actually really wanted to turn pro or not. I've heard this story about how he wanted to go back to BC. I don't know what to believe, But in terms of the real issue at hand, whether he's a center or a winger, I think the Flyers are going to try him at center. I think ultimately, though, if they want to get the most out of the player, his game really looks to me like to be that of a winger. And in terms of him in board battles, I mean, he is so board shy. I don't think it would make, Morgan Frost was criticized for that, and he's a center for not being, engaging enough. So he's going to have to improve in that area anyway. It's just, he's such a north-south player. And I don't know. We'll see. It makes for interesting discussion, and we'll see which narrative turns out to be the right one. He should be a good player. I compared him. I said right out of the gate, he's going to be like a Hoffman. He'll help your power play. He'll score. And then it's up to him, depending on how hard he wants to work, how good he is at taking coaching, to see whether he can expand past that point as just like a scoring winger. But talent's there. So we'll see. So you think, Dan, the United States should take gold? I think Sweden has to be the next favorite.
Yeah,
they should be able to get by Czechia.
I think when Canada lost to Czechia, the U.S. became a prohibitive favorite for gold. The Swedish team is very good, but you saw, they almost lost to Switzerland. That game went to overtime. So they needed some bogus penalties called on Switzerland to win that game. I think the U.S. team they're really unbelievable. And we saw, I think I tweeted out before the tournament started that Canada didn't look anywhere near as good as they normally are, and that the U.S. team looks like an absolute powerhouse. They're arguably the best top to bottom World Junior team that I've seen, even though they lack the star power of like a McDavid. So maybe you could say that some of those Canadian teams back in the day were better, but from top to bottom, this U.S. team has so much talent. And then on the defense, they've got Lane Hudson, Seamus Casey, and Zev Buum, who are like three incredible offensive defensemen. And then they've got Trey Augustine and Cam Fowler and net. Like this U.S. team is absolutely loaded. So it's really fun to watch. The games are on tomorrow, NHL Network. The USA games at 1:30, the Sweden games at 9. Definitely recommend people watching those if they're able to, with work and whatnot.
Oh yeah, definitely get that one on the DVR. So yeah, we'll see what happens, and I hope they win gold. I think it'd be a good experience for not only rooting for the USA, but also for all the guys on that team, including Cutter Gauthier. Good experience for him. So let's turn to the Philadelphia Flyers. We talked earlier about what their record is, and after looking pretty good against the Canucks and going in there in impressive fashion, particularly after a disappointing loss. Who did they play right before? Well, they lost to that game, Detroit. Nice comeback, overtime. They showed a lot of spine, and they followed that up with the win in Vancouver. Then they lose in overtime versus Seattle. Frustrating game. The travel there was kind of rough. And they go into Calgary, and that is a game that was really frustrating because they kept coming back, and the effort just wasn't. You could tell Twitter was really upset at what happened in that game, and they lose last night because McDavid just goes off. Chef, maybe have some thoughts about some of these games and pick out some moments that indicate what you think the team is going through right now.
So what I saw when I looked at it, I thought this was going to be one of those kind of like start fast, end fast road trips. I thought that they were going to get no better than 4 points going out there, and they got 3 out of 8. So I'm okay with that right now. They looked like they played like a team that was tired the last 2 games. They got Everett wasn't there. I don't know if they were just beat up, but at some point you're in the 4th game of a West Coast swing. You can't use the time anymore as an excuse and credit them. They didn't give us any excuses. They just said they didn't play as well as they should have. But I don't even think I think they kind of bounce back tomorrow because it is Columbus. But I'm looking at Calgary's the game. This is where you got to make up for the way you played against them last time. And it's a short turnover too, because it's like what, a 1:00 game. So this is that's when you got to like put the rubber to the road here and look and really bear down if you want to keep relevant. And that's what you want. You want the team to be relevant for as long as they can, because you want to know how which guys are going to end up keeping out of this whole process. So what I took away from that is I was a little let down. But I expected it's only 1 point less, so I don't know how much I was expecting it to be great, but so that's where I'm at on that. It was okay result.
Yeah, I mean, they're clinging to a wild card spot, like I talked about earlier. I think the thing is, though, and we've talked about this on this show, the way they have to play to be competitive versus good teams, the best teams, is it's one thing to do it in October and November, even early December. But now we're getting into the heart of the season, and the pace of play is picking up, the intensity is picking up. January, February, are they going to be out there willing to block all those shots? Their bodies are sore with an accumulation of trauma for 20, 30 more games. It's a tough way to play if you don't get anything from your power play. It's the last in the league. Mm-hmm. And you don't have that star player. You don't have a Jack Hughes or McDavid or Draisaitl like we saw last night to make it easy for what is otherwise an average team in Edmonton. So, Dan, what are your thoughts about this little goalie they're in, losing 5 out of 6?
Yeah, and they haven't really looked that great the last few games. You look at the standings right now, just from a macro perspective, and they're clinging to a playoff spot right now. Like if you look at the wild card situation right now, and I'm looking at like points percentage, they're basically in the last spot because the Caps are right behind them by 1 point, but they've got a better points percentage. And then the Devils, who are 3 points behind the Flyers, have 2 games in hand. So their points percentage is right behind them. I mean, I look at it, and one of the keys for me in the early season to how good this team was playing was how well Travis Sanheim was playing. He's kind of disappeared a little bit in terms of doing what he was doing earlier in the season. So that's a problem. And, the offense has dried up a little bit. They've been making some moves to shake it up a little bit. But guys like Tyson Forster, who started off slow and then had a little bit of a hot stretch, he's basically, can't buy a goal these days. Atkinson can't buy a goal. And what you mentioned about, and this is what people always say about John Tortorella's teams, is that they play so hard that as the season wears on, they kind of wear down. And we might be seeing that to a certain extent. And the power plays you mentioned, so are they now officially last in the league?
Yes.
So isn't that the last 3 years, every single year they've been last?
Yes.
I mean, when are they gonna? I don't know. It's unbelievable to me. How can a power play be that bad 3 years running and they don't do anything to try and fix it? Now, not that they haven't tried anything to fix it, but they're just so abysmal at doing anything. Because you can't argue to me that the Flyers don't have as much talent as if you just look at their top 5 guys as some of the other teams in the league. How is it possible? Like, I think also maybe they've been switching around the defensemen too much on the power play. It's funny because like 2 weeks ago, Tort said, okay, we're fine. We're going to, to try and get it going, we're going to keep the same guys. Rocky told me that he wants to keep the same guys for a while in their spots to get some chemistry going. And then, of course, 2 games later, they changed it. They've tried almost every defenseman on the team on the power play. I think maybe Nick Seeler might be the only guy who hasn't like had a power play opportunity. It's I don't know. It's just abysmal. It has to be coaching. So I look at sort of Sanheim disappearing a little bit, the power play continuing to just be absolutely dreadful, and the Torts wear down factor, may have something to do with it. It'll be interesting the next stretch here. I don't think they're a playoff team, and I think that it's more likely than not that we might see kind of like a real regression towards, the bottom 10 of the standings over the course of the next few months. But I don't know. I mean, Isaiah, what are you expecting from these guys?
Well, that's the thing. I'm looking at the standings myself, and you have to be realistic. The teams behind them either have more experience, better star players, or just have or a better team altogether. You have New Jersey, Tampa, and even Washington is playing better as a team, and they have some experienced guys that have been there that in clutch games may be capable of doing more than the Flyers. Only the Islanders, even with I could see the Islanders maybe, getting aced out. But even they have a better goalie. And they play a defensive system that should keep them in this. I don't know if the Flyers are going to regress as much to the back of the pack or like in that, bottom 10, like even if they're 10th worst team in the league, whatever, 22nd worst, whatever. But I could definitely see them missing the playoffs because I don't know. That leads me to like, what happens now? Like, who's not getting it done in particular? Now, a miracle happened that even after Christmas, when Nick Delorier was actually scratched last night, and why not? They've been that fourth line. I was looking at the hockey stat cards, and you notice that Lawton and Hathaway had better games. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily because Delorier wasn't out there, but I mean, it's just that Nick has really been trailing the play. And you can see he's just fighting it. So they went with Mark Stahl last night, got a goal out of it. So Mark Stahl comes in, they're going 11-7. But when Cates gets back in, you have other candidates to come out. Chef, I mean, you look at it, Cam Atkinson, they gave him more time 5-on-5 and just in general than even Couturier at one point in the game. I don't know if it was at the end of the night, if that's what happened. I have to look it up. And it's like you're force feeding something, just trying to get blood from a stone. Forster has earned a benching at this point. I love the way he's being responsible. He's doing the kind of board work we hope one day Cutter Gauthier will be able to do. So you can learn, Dan, you can. But I mean, Forster wasn't any great shakes along the boards. But I mean, one of these guys is going to have to take a seat.
Well, I'll say this: they even put Atkinson on the power play, and it didn't work. And the sad part is, look, you look down the power play. If they they're the worst in the league. They're horrible. If they score, let's say 5 goals on the power play more, how many games does that make a difference in? That's the worst part. You're either tying it or you're going ahead. It's ridiculous. So I think. People were asking about Atkinson, tweeting and texting and all that. And all I could say is I don't see him going anywhere before the end of this season. I think it could be an off-season move at the draft. But people are like, oh, no, he can go. I'm like, they're being totally unrealistic. He's not going anywhere. Nobody's going to take that contract, and nobody's for next year, and you're going to have to sweeten it even in the off-season, I think. But the point being is it's time for the hard love to come out. You need to start treating some players like the way you treated some of the other players. I don't know. It just seems like so like you got to treat I know there's a history with Cam, and he's given him every chance to get out of it. But you got to treat him the same way you treated Morgan Frost. Morgan Frost, and there's other guys that are playing a lot better and got benched for a lot less. That's my only discrepancy at this point. You got to treat everybody. You got to treat it the same because, I understand we talk about how great the room is and all that, and they're playing for each other. But once you start playing favorites like that, you lose the room too. You could.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, who's on your, I guess call it crap list, poo list?
I mean, there's not a lot of guys on like the nice list at this point. I mean, I'm glad that they moved Farabee up to the top line.
Yeah,
because I think he's been day in, day out, arguably their best forward this season. So, and obviously Konechny too. But I was glad to see them move Farabee up. It's just, the rest is just kind of like a mess. Obviously, Couturier has been good. Couturier, you get past now that new top line of Konechny, Couturier, and Farabee, and is there anyone? I guess Ryan Poehling would get good grades for what he's done this season. He's been pretty good. And then, obviously guys like Hathaway, sure, Brink's been fine. But yeah, Forrester can't score. I mean, he was drafted to be a scorer, and he takes way too long to get his shot going. I mean, you could time his lead up to a shot with a calendar. Like he needs to work on his one-timers.
I can come back and forth from the store before he gets it off.
Atkinson can't score. He's had good scoring chances. I feel like, once he scores one, maybe they'll start going in. Frost has not done a whole lot. Owen Tippett, I don't know what to think of Owen Tippett. This is going to be an interesting one because Owen Tippett's an RFA at the end of this season. Mm-hmm. He's obviously a talented, athletic hockey player, but the hockey IQ, I'm not sure how high it is there. So I don't know what Owen Tippett's upside is. Is he a second line scorer or is he just a third line guy? I don't know. That's going to be an interesting contract negotiation.
He needs a really good center. You put him with a good playmaking center, and I think the whole thing can turn around. I really do.
Maybe Gauthier will be a guy that, that could play with Tippett. I don't know. But Frost is supposed to be that playmaking center. Yep. Obviously he's not sort of at that level. Here's an interesting guy who could come up at some point to help the Flyers out is Emile Andre down in the AHL. Obviously, he's one of the Flyers' best prospects. He's a pretty good left-handed defenseman. I think he's something like third in the AHL in rookie defenseman points or something. Or
I think Appleyard had something like that.
And he's been good he's been very good on the power play. I wonder if Andre is the guy that comes up here in the next month and they give him a look on the power play. I think he's a little more naturally aggressive than Cam York offensively. So I wonder if Andre's the guy that could maybe supercharge the power play a little bit, not supercharge it, but help it out a little bit.
Defrib it.
Yeah, get it to 31st.
Yeah. There's not a lot of a team you didn't mention, Isaiah, that's behind the Flyers in the standings that's been playing really well is the Penguins, right? So, and the Lightning have not been playing great, but do we really think the Flyers are going to finish with more points than the Lightning this year? I mean, seems unlikely to me. So they're behind right now. I mean, I look at it now and I still think the Flyers could end up as a bottom 12 team in the league. I think it's possible, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. Now, according to Money Puck, the Flyers still have, and what a difference one game makes. So it shows you if it's affected by one game, how silly it is, but let's do it. So on this day, the January 3rd, the Flyers have a 53.3% chance of making the playoffs. I think before last night, it was like 73. So unless I read that wrong, but I'm reading this right, and that's it. Columbus has a 0.5%. Could be worse. And again, Columbus could be getting Macklin Celebrini in addition to already having Adam Fantilli. At some point, that's got to come through.
I'm pretty confident that the Flyers are not going to make the playoffs this year.
No, I someone said, well, they banked a lot of points. Other feedback I got was, well, they don't have to travel. They have 45 games left. And there are, most importantly, according to some fans, are waiting for me to give this little number here, 26 games until the trade deadline on March 8th. So we're 26 more games to play before that fateful date.
Well, I think and I said at the beginning of the season, and I'll stick to it because I think Dan's right. I think they missed the playoffs by like 2 points, 4 points, or 6 points, or 5. Within 6 points, they're going to miss the playoffs. It's not going to be by a lot. I think they hang in there. I think they give you an entertaining season. You're, like I said, most of the time with these games, you're getting your money's worth. So it's a good game. Hell, when was the last time any of us can remember? I mean, for me, I stayed up for all West Coast games, and I haven't done that in 2-3 years because it wasn't worth it. Now it's the team's worth it. The team's worth staying up after dark anymore. So
yeah, it's something I noticed in the Calgary game. I think Bobby Brink scores a late comeback goal, and obviously they fell short in Calgary. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Bobby Brink is right there at the net. And we have all these big guys that don't make it to the net as often as they should, including Tyson Forster. I mean, he could get to the net and find a way. It's a mentality. It's a mindset. I think Forster would really help his case until he needs a shooting coach. We talked about it. Russ Cohen talks about it all the time about how Tippett and Forster definitely need a shooting coach. Something's got to change. And same thing with Cam York for that matter. But
they should take a look at what Farabee did. And Farabee to get himself on track. Where has he been all season? Most of his goals, what has he got? Like 10 or 11 now, or something like that, or 9 or 10 or somewhere in there. I guarantee 7 or 8 of them are literally right by the crease. He goes to the dirty spots. That's why he's getting the goals. And if he's not there, he's setting up somebody else who is going to the dirty spots. So that's
Farabee is 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 points. Yeah. Same thing with TK. Remember TK is coming off that down year, and they pull him aside and they charted where he was scoring from when he was going well, and he was tracking to be a perennial all-star, and versus, what he did that year. And then last year he came back and he was the guy that looked like he was trending toward being an all-star. And this year he's continued the same pace. Travis, TK with 18 goals, 15 apples, 33 points, leading the Flyers, and has been their most consistent player. Last night, he tried to cheat a little bit on the PK, and it ended up in the back of the Flyers' net. But he's trying to make an aggressive play, and he's playing hurt. He must have the nasty bone bruise because he's limping around since he blocked that shot. I think it was in Calgary, or was it in Seattle or Calgary? I think it was
Seattle game.
Yeah. So he's hurting, but he's soldiering on. But I got to give him a little bit of a pass. We had a listener or follower on X that was giving TK some flack. And like, man, this guy is playing for, most guys would have taken a night off. And he's just been a constant threat all year.
He's been a leader, though, too. I mean, I think people forget that on a team with only one letter out there, I mean, the guy doesn't stop chirping. If you're watching him, even watch him away from plays, he's talking. He's like, bah, 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 bah. He's like that freaking chihuahua that's at the door, and you just want to put in like a flyer for Jesus or something in the door, and that thing looks like the devil chirping at you. And that's what TK is. It's a good thing. And he's leading by example, and he's doing things that have productive results, and he can turn around and say to everybody, look, I did it. This is how we're going to do it. And it's working for him.
That works for him. Not every guy is going to, that I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. It's just his personality, a way of motivating himself, I guess. Dan, what do you have to add in terms of what you see going forward with this team and looking at the schedule and all those types of things?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that the long road trips are over. I don't know. Again, I was sort of pessimistic coming into the season, and they proved me wrong the way that they've played so far. And again, we've sort of covered off in past episodes what some of those things are. I thought that the defense wasn't going to be nearly as good as it is. The Walker-Sealer pairing's been excellent. I didn't know if Carter Hart was going to be playing based on some of the Team Canada stuff. But I just, like I said earlier, I think a regression to closer to where we thought this team is going to come into play. The power play, if they don't do something to fix that power play, it's just going to become harder and harder for them to win games. I think, and Tortorella he's been very difficult, after the last few games. I don't think that really helps anything either. So, they've got Columbus Thursday night. Then they've got the Flames, but then they've got the Penguins. That's going to be a big game. I think that's on Monday night, maybe. So that'll be an important game. I'm just going to default to where I was before the season, which was not all that optimistic about this team.
No, that makes sense. They got Canadians after that, and Canadians are actually playing pretty well, getting a whole bunch of goals from the defense. Nobody saw that coming. Reinbacher's not even there, and they're scoring on defense. So, there's a block of games right there that they're going to tell us a lot. It just takes 4 more games, and they're pretty much almost at the halfway point. Let me see. They played how many so far? 38, is it they played? Yeah, 37. Yeah, so, 4 more and it's 41. 4 more games and it's a halfway point.
Yeah, that's the Canadians game.
I'm guessing that at the end of January, the narrative is going to shift back to who are we going to be trading before the deadline to get assets back? Because I'm just not all that confident. Maybe they'll prove me wrong again, but I foresee a little bit of a difficult stretch here for this team. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but that's kind of like what I'm seeing at this point.
Well, you got a couple of West Coast teams coming in after that Canadians game. The Wild, not really, but Winnipeg is like a dark horse cup contender, especially with the way Hellebuck is playing. Then they play the Blues. Okay, not really.
Those are all on the road. Those games.
Well, yeah. That's another road trip, but not like going out west. Then they play the Blues on the road. Then they come back home. They play Dallas Stars, cup contender, Colorado Avalanche, and another matinee in Philly. And that's my choice for the Stanley Cup this year. They better make a trade though. So that's really going to be interesting. I think by the 20th of this year, and I don't even have to wait till the end of the month because they got a few more games after that. We're going to know a lot, like a heck of a lot more. It's going to be accelerated. Because if they could even go 500 during this period, they might be in better shape than we think. But I could definitely see. I think I agree overall. The regression was inevitable. This is what Tortorella himself said. Remember, he said there's going to be a dip. He said that about 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. So I think that's where it's at. Plus the things we talked about earlier about blocking shots, playing the way they have to play. Raider Frank chipped in with a tweet talking about how it's really tough to sustain that if you don't have a McDavid or a big star like Jack Hughes. That's the one thing the Flyers really need. So the question is this, before we call it a night, the Flyers need help on their power play. They could use somebody who makes that go. They obviously have center depth as an issue. We're not sure what Gauthier is going to do. Are the Flyers in enough of a position where they could make a trade, like a young player, an area where they have access on the wing, what have you, and maybe get a center who might be available? Maybe he looks like a third liner now, but maybe he could be more, could end up being like a Tage Thompson kind of deal where it's not quite as prolific as that. I don't even know who I'm talking about. But is there some kind of trade where the Flyers could exchange young assets and maybe help the team for now and the long range, or is this all going to have to wait until the off season? Dan, I'll just go, off the top of your head.
They have the assets to do it. If that's something that Danny Briere wants to do, they have the assets to do it. They have young kids who they could potentially move in a deal like you mentioned. They've got I think they could make it happen. This is where Danny Briere, has to come in and make a trade like that. If I don't, like you said, Isaiah, you don't know who would be out there.
Maybe Martin, I don't know if they'd be willing to part with him because he had a good year last year. But just say Carolina needs what? A goaltender, another defenseman. I don't think so. But Marty Necas is having a little bit of a down year, even though they like the player. He's played mainly wing, but he can play center. I think it's Derek from the Liberty Yell had brought his name up. And I did some looking at that. And I'm like, that is actually not a bad idea. That is picking out a player who still could be ascending, could play center. And the worst comes to worst, he's a really good, solid player with a good foundation under a coach like Brendan Moore.
That's possibly. I still think that if Carter Hart gets cleared in the World Juniors situation, or if the team wants to take a chance on that risk anyway, that he's still a guy that I think that they could potentially look at moving in a big deal if the play falls off and, in a month from now, they're month or a month and a half from now, they're clearly not in a playoff position and there's still teams in desperate need of goaltending. That's one where I could see you potentially make the move. Probably not going to happen, but, it could happen. Again, I think Morgan Frost is a guy that they might look to move. He's playing center right now, so you would need to, get back a center. I don't know. I mean, from the wing perspective, who would you be looking at trading?
I tell you, if you have Gauthier coming here and if you think you get a center, and wingers are a lot easier to get. And with the concern I have at center is so acute, it's such a problem for them because Paling is on a good team. Paling's a really nice fourth line center, in my opinion. Okay.
You don't think he has a third line upside?
Maybe, but it's he's a tweener. So he's like a 3.5 C. Let's put it that way. So Forrest is not going to make it here. I just don't see it at all. If he's had enough, we've played enough of this season. Is he going to start scoring again in garbage time? I don't think so. Lawton's not really a center, and he's past his prime anyway. Where are they going to get centers from? That's the problem. And if you have the opportunity to do that, would I trade Tippett? Sure, I would. Would I trade Forster? Sure. Because you need centers. Yep. You can't go anywhere in this league without centers. And Couturier's health is a big gamble that you're going to be rolling the dice. What if Couturier has to miss more and more time? Because, Dan, as you mentioned, before he even signed that contract, he had so many hard miles on that body. Even before he got 2 back surgeries. So I would make it a priority if I could to get a young center. And sure, I would part with one of those young wingers to get it. If you felt like that player could play center on your team. It's that
kind of like a move that like Montreal made for Kirby Dach, right, a few years ago, or
right.
The Kings. I don't even know if Gabe Vilardi is playing wing or center for the Jets, but a sort of guy like Dach or Vilardi who was a pretty high draft pick, who the team that drafted him maybe is looking to move on for some reason, that type of thing. Because Kirby Dach's going to end up being a really good center for Montreal, I think. And he was a high draft pick, and the Blackhawks, were in that weird spot where they were trading away anyone that had any value to them so they could tank for guard, which worked. And, and they ended up trading away Dach. So something like that could make some sense.
Exactly. That would make sense for the Flyers. If we're talking about a deal, young asset, exchanging one for another, then that kind of makes sense. Helps them today, even if it doesn't so much help in the standings, but it helps put all the pieces together. And if that also means that they think that Gauthier is really a winger, they don't have to force feed him into the middle, which I don't like doing. I think, again, I keep thinking of John LeClair. I'm not saying they're the same player, but LeClair was a certain kind of player with a ceiling at center, moves to wing, and even without Lindros, he was a monster and a lot to deal with. Okay, a lot of people could say, well, he played with Lindros. You know what? When Eric missed a lot of time or was out, he still scored like 45 goals. He was that good. And that could be the situation with Gauthier or not. But it keeps coming to mind. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think he has more Jeff Carter in him than LeClair, and Carter was a pretty good center.
Yep. Carter was a next level skater. He was even more of a north-south player, or well, at least comparable. But he was an elite accelerator. Maybe Gauthier could get to that point, but even coming out of juniors, Carter had next level acceleration. So interesting. But he could get that shot off a lot like Gauthier as well. But it was a wrister, not so much like a snapper like Gauthier has. Either one, it'll work. So, all right. So, Chef, if you have any final thoughts for tonight, we're going to call it a wrap.
I just say this. I said, by the end of the month, you'll know where this team is. I agree with both of you in that respect. I think that's the case. We're going to find out whether this team's real or not, and what the future is by the end of this month. We'll know if they're going to be, hard selling or just trading for swapping guys for positions and stuff like that, like you said. But either way, you'll find out about it. If you don't agree with us, that's fine. You can tweet at us or X at us or whatever it is they're calling it anymore. And you can find me on Chef to Left B on X.
Fantastic. Dan, any final words for the people and where can catch up with you on social media?
Do you guys know who, again, this is a flawed stat we all agree with, but I'm just happen to look at the Flyers statistics. Do you guys know who's leading the Flyers in plus minus?
Farabee. Was it Farabee?
I thought it was a defenseman.
No, it's not.
No?
Is
I
it
know
Scott
he's
Walker?
Yegor Zamula.
Oh, wow.
Yegor Zamula is a plus 14. Who would have thought?
And you know what? And he looks like the most mature point man they've had on the power play this year. I'm not saying he's prolific.
They don't panic, at least.
He makes good decisions with the puck. That's all. I'm not saying he's anything special.
Yeah. But that's interesting. He's a plus 14
yeah.
Anyway. No, I don't have anything specific. I'm interested to see if Andre comes up at some point. They're trying to try and get him into the power play a little bit. I'm still waiting for York to kind of, take off at some point there. But yeah, no, we'll see. I'm interested to see what happens. I'm excited to watch the World Juniors games the next few days. I mean, I'd say all Flyers fans who can watch should watch. It's great stuff. It's not often that the Flyers are going to have a kid who's the favorite to be MVP of the entire tournament. So we'll see. It should be fun. Folks can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at dsilver88.
Fantastic. By the way, you want to follow the O&B Puckcast on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck, on Getter, a backup plan, at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. And of course, you can follow us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Audible, Google. We have a YouTube page. Just plug in there, O&B Puckcast, a Facebook page. Check us out. Just put it in there. Again, O&B Puckcast. And if you could rate us on one of these platforms, and of course, subscribe or follow, whatever applies. It really helps us out, move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcasts. So tomorrow night at home versus Columbus, the Flyers have that matinee on Saturday versus the Calgary Flames, then back Monday the 8th versus the Penguins, always a barn burner, and then the 10th versus the Canadians, playing above their weight right now. And I would not be surprised if we saw you then. If not, we'll see you after they play and they go to Minnesota on the 12th and then the 13th against Winnipeg Jets as they continue on in January. So until then, everybody, thanks for listening and take care.